there's a lot of failure.
Yeah.
In entrepreneurship.
Yes.
But you really never fail unless you give up.
Yes.
So if you never give up, you never fail.
That's true.
And
you just learn.
There's a great book that I just read during my 100-day challenge, which was the obstacle is the way. And if you can reposition your mindset to that, whatever is challenging you, whatever is coming in your way, essentially, embrace that, move through it, and you ultimately grow and succeed beyond that.
Yes.
Which is what the whole point is.
That's really up my alley. I'm super big on Eastern thought, and that's very Eastern, very Asian, you know.
Well, I mean, if, you know, Bill and I jumped into this, he had his own business. I had a version of my own business, but I was leaving a big corporate entity to get together. And we said, let's make something that we felt was filling the marketplace. Something that was not necessarily the norm of what was being done.
Yeah.
Typical marketing agencies don't create content.
Yes.
Typical video production companies don't distribute the content and strategize about the content. So we decided to make something that would bridge that gap to more effectively help the clients.
Yeah.
It's also been a big learning experience for us to say, do people want what we are offering?
Yeah.
Do they understand the benefits of combining those forces?
Yeah. Understanding the market.
And prior to the pandemic, when we started this, we were still pushing this idea of you got to create videos.
Yes.
Right? The pandemic came along, and then everyone was like, oh, yeah, we got to make videos. Videos is the way to go. Okay, yeah. It all clicked for everybody.
And it was safety, right? It was Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's safety first, right? That videos were safe.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was a weird transition for us. Like we didn't have to convince people to do it anymore.
I want to go back to something Brian said though.
Do you want to do an intro to this episode?
I mean, we can, but probably. I mean, whatever, you know, I like this organic cold open.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
So I hold your thought.
Okay.
And let's do
it.
Let's do the
I got it. It's like
the official
formal
this
thing.
This is a
right?
real episode.
So I will say that what we have been able to do very well, I think, this season is we have had a mix of good people on the show that like I know or like Brian knows well enough that we can have a good, comfortable conversation with, you know, with some kind of context. And
I'm impressed that you said season. That's already impressive.
Yeah, this is our third season.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
you're wrapping up our third season.
That's impressive.
We're going to start season 4.
We're gonna come back strong in January.
Word up. Word up.
But I love that I can have these guests on. Like Brian either has somebody he knows or I have somebody I know. And I love that I can have these guests on and people that I've known for years, right? Many years. And we figured out the other day, it was 2008 or something.
Something like that.
Just welcome to the podcast, Sherrard. I would say introduce yourself and tell people what you do.
I always get weird when people ask me that because I don't like talking about myself in that way, particularly as I've gotten older.
We want to tell your story.
Right. But Sherrard Shekeese Duvall, by trade, I'm a filmmaker, TV and film producer. I'm the president and founder of OTR Media Group. And we are a nonfiction production house that also specializes in strategy and media literacy. So I tell everybody, basically what we do at OTR Media Group is we help people communicate with contemporary audiences. And we use media to help people do that.
That's awesome. You also are a esteemed professor at the university.
I am adjunct professor. I don't
Adjunct
want
professor, whatever.
disrespect
That's
none
fine.
of my professor friends. I'm just
I
an
can use
adjunct.
esteemed without it being meaning anything, right? I didn't say tenured. I just
Yeah.
like esteemed. You know,
Teaching, man, is one of the things I love to do.
Yeah.
Of course, education is big. OTR. However, me personally, I love teaching. I love education. I love just the act of teaching. I think that kind of is because I like public speaking.
Okay.
And engaging with people on that level. I think that comes from my DJing days, you know, like I like being the conductor of people, and particularly the education part of it is when I was DJing, it was like the gratification of seeing someone enjoy what I enjoy, right? Like I'm making you go crazy with how I'm playing this music and you're reacting like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, we're in this together. It's kind of the same way with education, where it's like I get a chance to share something with a young person or someone that's younger than me, or even sometimes someone that's older than me, and they go, I got it. And I'm like, yeah, you got it. You get it. And they're like, yes, I got it. Like that to me is the same thing. So it's one of the things I really enjoy. But at the University of South Carolina School of Visual Art and Design, I teach a media management course that I love, that you all have had a pleasure of working with several of the students that have come through my class.
It's interesting. Anytime we have interns or I get applicants that are graduates, they're almost always somebody that's been in your class.
Boom.
Like, he walks in and he goes, oh yeah, you were in my class. You were in my class. And so it's cool. I also was remarking on, you are the second guest I've had on that I met as a DJ.
Yes.
Now, the other interesting thing is I met Brian as a DJ.
Whoa.
I am.
Now that I did not know. I thought you were going to tell me that you met him at one of the nights when he was in a dance competition.
No.
Because I also know that he is a dance competition.
I've actually never seen him dance, so I assume he's good. I don't.
I am
everybody's
aware
talked about it, but
of his dance competition
yeah,
days.
that's right. Brian was a DJ when we met. I was shooting video at a wedding, and Brian was DJing at the wedding.
That's crazy.
And that's how we met. And he and actually,
was he a good DJ?
I think so. Yeah, it's hard to tell with wedding DJs sometimes because like if they do their job right, they're transparent, right?
No.
So if they do their job right, that means that everybody has fun. They don't recognize that he's done anything. He just makes them,
It's
turns
an
them
joyous occasion.
Yeah, everybody's having a good time. When you DJ or when Preach DJs or whatever, it's a little bit more about you kind of doing things.
Yes,
out there.
creating the atmosphere.
Right. With a wedding DJ, what you've got to do is, I think I've observed it for years. So you've got to observe who's there, what they react to, and you just play the thing. They don't want you talking or interacting with them very much. They just want you to play the music that they want to hear. And so it's a little bit more of a introvert's job.
That wasn't the way I approach wedding DJing.
Yeah.
However, I do know many wedding DJs that adopt that particular style.
Right.
The
that
other
was not my style.
element of a wedding DJ is once the bride and groom come in, you are running the show. Like you are making sure everything stays on task.
The schedule.
The schedule.
Yep.
If there's a wedding coordinator, they are turning it over to you, and because you got to do all the announcements of all the different things, and announcing the wedding party coming in. And,
It's a production.
yeah.
But all the hundreds of wedding DJs that I've worked with over the years, and there were hundreds, there were very few that were the show, right? So much of it in that context, and some of them were like, we got this guy. I've had several of those where like they brought the DJ down from New York.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
And we got the guy.
Yeah. And it was about the DJ's entertainment and the way, but the vast majority wanted to blend into the party and not be noticed. And so, that was, but anyway, Brian and I met when Brian was a DJ, and
Crazy.
he was also working at Russell and Jeffcoat doing marketing for Russell and Jeffcoat, and said, hey, would you come and do some interviews at Russell and Jeffcoat for our executive team and do some of that kind of stuff? And I was like, absolutely. At that time, I was doing majority weddings, but I did that wedding, the one that you and I met on, for free for a friend of mine.
Crazy.
Right? And so that's how that works sometimes, is like you can't always bank on it.
Serendipity.
But like serendipity, some things, happen that way.
And then we had a couple other weddings along the way after that first one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Wow.
then
That's crazy.
He went from Russell and Jeffcoat to working at Coldwell Banker, and then we got the TV campaign for Coldwell Banker that year, and just kind of the rest is history. But like,
that's wild.
Yeah, it's but there's several people that I've met as DJs, which is super weird. And I'm not exposed to DJs other than weddings and.
But you are a music guy.
Thank you.
guess.
I think that you got to put that context in there. I mean, Bill was a music guy, played in plenty of bands.
He's still in bands.
Been around. You're still in bands with
I don't know how he
fancy
stays,
sequins
right.
outfits
I don't know how he
too.
stays up till midnight, 1 o'clock.
Oh my goodness!
Thrashing on his piano.
You guys don't have any idea how difficult it is.
I know.
And the hardest part is not the playing. Like once I start playing at 11 or midnight or whatever, it's fine. But it's waiting from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. Like, what am I supposed to be doing here?
In a green room where you can nap.
Yeah, there's no green rooms in Columbia. Like, I don't know if you've been to any of these bars in Columbia that I play. Yeah, there's no green rooms. Like, it's not. There's no M&Ms of any color anywhere. It's just. It's hard to get going. So I have never known the origin of your stage name, Shekeese. I don't know what that is. Where did that come from?
So Shekeese came first.
Okay.
Shekeese came when I was in high school. Is when I first started DJing, like seriously, and I was searching for a DJ name, and my very first DJ name was some variation of Snoop Eastwood, because The Chronic was out in 1992.
Right.
And he called himself Snoop Eastwood on the track. And at the time I was in the, you remember when people used to color on jeans?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? On the pants and on the back of the jacket. So I used to do that. And so it was some variation of Eastwood was the first DJ name. Then I was like, it's not good enough. And then I was like, man, I want a name that's kind of like more distinct, that is more for me. And so my second jean jacket, I took my first name, which is Sherrard, and my middle name, which is Marquise. I changed the QU to a K and made it SHE-KIS, right? So the second jean jacket I had had Shekeese on the back, and I drew the same little dog from Snoop's album.
Yeah.
But everybody was calling me Shekeese.
Right. Which is not good.
It was whack. And I was like, nah, I kept saying, no, it's Shekeese. It's Shekeese. Nah, it's Shekeese. And what was interesting is right around maybe a year after that, somewhere between when I was 15 and 16, I met a guy named DJ Shakim, who you may or may not be familiar with. He used to be Bow Wow's DJ. Now he's New Additions Tour DJ. Really big guy now. Used to be So Def's DJ too. But anyways, so Shakim was a buddy of mine, and I was like, oh man, my name was like kind of like his. Yeah. But it was Shekeese. His was Shakim. Both had a dash. I was like, how can I make my name more distinct from him? Because it's one of the things I love about being a hip hop dude is you don't want to be like anybody else. You don't want to wear the same clothes as anybody. You don't want to do anything. Well, back in my day.
Right.
And I feel so old saying that, back in my day. But it's true.
It's okay.
And so I was like, I remember on a paper, like, how can I make my name different than his? And so it's pronounced Keese, and then there's Reese's Pieces, and it's Reese. I was like, I just do Shekeese. You can't mess that up. And correct.
And there it is.
Like, that's where Shekeese came from. And then the Beast came later when I was doing radio at the Big DM and Hot 103.9 with Charlamagne the God. We had a radio show on it in the evening, and Charlamagne has a lisp, and he would always mispronounce my name. He would always mispronounce, he would say Shekeese.
Oh, yeah.
Which now, for context, annoyed me because that was like Shakim and I wanted to be Shekeese, right? Yeah. And so I went over to the booth one night. He kept mispronouncing. I was like, bro, it's not Shekeese, it's just Shekeese, like the Reese or the East. And he goes, he goes like the Beast, like Hank McCoy, the real McCoy. I was like, whatever, bro. It's just Shekeese. So he opened the mic and started calling me Shekeese the Beast.
Gotcha.
And that's where that came from.
Well, in my phone, you're still Shekeese, because that's how I put it in when we very first met, because I had not ever seen it written down.
There you go.
So it's still Shekeese in my phone. So that's like seven.
It's actually Shekeese.
It's Shekeese.
Sherrard,
Marquise.
But
Shekeese.
But that's 7 phones ago. That it just is transferred along, misspelled.
I'm just thinking calling you Sherrard.
Yeah,
that's cool too.
That's how I was introduced to you.
To me. Yeah,
it's interesting.
I say Sherrard because I feel it's formal.
Yeah,
and so like it'd be like people calling me William. you know?
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's
And so-
kind of how I looked at it for a long time. I think that's how I look at it now. Like Sherrard is like formal. Shekeese is colloquial.
Yeah.
I think is the right word.
Yeah.
But for me, like it took me a while to get adjusted to calling myself Shekeese again because I had spent so much time separating Sherrard from Shekeese.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought I had to.
Right.
You know, I thought I had to be more formal when entering the business space because of the popularity of Shekeese. I didn't want to come in the rooms and people be like, "Oh, the DJ's here," you know, and
Right.
I thought that was like a diss. And then it's so interesting because when I was at Genesis, Cliff was the one that originally encouraged me to put the Shekeese back in my name because he was like, every time somebody comes to Genesis, they're like, "Yo, is that Shekeese the Beast over there?"
Yeah.
And he would be like, and one day he came to me, he was like, "Who is this Shekeese character?" Because
Yeah.
I kept everything so separate. And he was like, "Since everybody knows you're Shekeese, why don't you just put Sherrard Shekeese Duvall?" He was like, "We could change all your credit cards and business cards and
Yeah.
everything." So I've been it's been on paper that way since I was at Genesis, but I still wasn't using Shekeese really until like the last, I say probably since the pandemic, you know, having conversations with going to therapy and
Yeah.
really thinking about myself and conversations with my brother Fat Rat and it made I didn't realize how weird it made everybody that I was calling myself Sherrard instead of Shekeese. And when I started calling myself
yourself from it is interesting because you spent so long building it up, and then
Yes.
you're like, no, that's not really me anymore.
Yeah,
and
I have like once I started calling myself Shekeese again, particularly in public, I had friends of mine that literally called me or would come over to the house and be like, "Hey man, I just want to say thank you for bringing the Shekeese thing back," because I was totally confused. Like, and I'd be like, "What?" He'd be like, "Yeah, man. Like you told me you were doing this film thing and this comedy thing." I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh shit, Shekeese the Beast is gonna be doing film and TV," and then you're like, "No, Sherrard," and they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's happening.
And I think what happens too is I feel like you know, whatever our identity is that we get stuck with, like my identity as a videographer, right? As a guy who covers things, right?
Yes.
If I wanted to distance myself from that, I took a long time making that work, right? Making a business out of it and all that kind of stuff. And then you all of a sudden go, "Nope, I don't want to be that anymore.
Yes.
I want to be this thing." And nobody's following you.
Yes,
Right?
I'm
Everybody's
assuming
like,
you probably had the same issue because you were pretty well known at Coldwell Banker.
as a real estate
doing
guy.
Well,
that.
I mean, I wasn't selling real estate though.
That's true. That's true.
I was the head of marketing. So
Even still, you know, people will associate you with that thing.
well,
And
it's funny. There's multiple circles. We were just at the Growth Summit
Yeah.
past week.
How was that?
It was good. Yeah, I mean, it was good. And I'm gonna tell you
That's
what
why
happens.
I like Brian.
What's
Brian
funny-
keeps it funky.
Let me tell you what's
Brian
funny
was
about
like,
that
"Man,
is
I
it is
was there."
hard to sit in one spot for a whole day,
Yes.
right? It's hard for some of us to sit in a whole spot for 20 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like, I got some good stuff out of it. But I go into things like that going, I want to get 2 or 3 good pieces of information, and it'll be worth it, right? And
I feel like Brian is the opposite.
right.
Really? Why?
I do. I mean, I feel like Bill goes into it thinking if I get 1 or 2 information, right? I feel like Brian goes into it going, all right, so why am I here? Is that true?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I go into those things with an open mind, saying I'm always give me a nugget. I'm just waiting for a nugget, or something to click and say, this is what I got to do.
Okay.
Which happened because I only stayed for half of it, but I got my
See?
nugget and I bounced.
Yeah.
See?
Was that John
I had other
Barnes?
stuff I needed to do.
What was your nugget?
John Barnes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to get some of that.
Shout
stuff
out
right.
to John Barnes.
But what I was saying was a guy approached me. He's like, "Where do I know you from?" I was like, "Real estate."
Could be a lot
Are
of
you in real
things.
estate? Are you
Dance competitions.
I don't recognize you as a coach from all the little, youth coaching that happens. So there's just so you have a real estate, you have a marketing, you have a coaching, you have Bill's got his bands and all the different circles combined, and people are out of context.
Yes.
We were at the AFP Awards.
Okay.
And Dondi was the MC. And she's looking at me going, "Where do I know you from?" I know you. And I've known her through Coldwell Banker, but I've also known her through Elaine and that connection more deeply. So as soon as I said, oh, I'm Elaine's husband, she goes, oh.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just out of context.
Yes. Yeah. That's very true.
Well, so I am interested in your take on a couple things. You and I have been in the business long enough. I mean, I think you were sort of really in the business before, much longer than I have been really in the business. But like, because when you and I first started working together, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was a camera owner. Like I run across these guys, I say, I'm a guitar owner. I'm not a guitar player, right? I own a guitar, but don't make me play it, right? And that's how I was when you and I started. I owned a camera. I was making a living somehow, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Honestly, what is it? 15 years later or 16 years later, the world has changed. The media landscape has changed.
Tremendous.
All of the stuff that we started doing whenever we started this is all completely flipped, from where it started.
Yeah.
What is your take on things like this? Things like, why would everybody want a podcast, right? Why are we in this place where any of this makes sense? So what is this? What does this media landscape look like?
That's complicated for me because I've been in the film industry for a very long time. I mean, now you're talking 1998, right? So that's what, a lot of years. Doesn't seem like it's that long ago in my mind, but technically somewhere in the 20s.
26.
Thank you, Brian. Makes me feel
You had
so
to put
young.
a number on it.
So there's that, right? So
Yeah.
I've seen like all of these iterations of media and everything from P2 cards to DSLRs when they came about, and all of these different, I've seen, I actually lived through the evolution of an editing laptop. Like I saw that go from not a thing to a thing. So there's that. The other part of it is I'm also a media educator, particularly media literacy. So I spend a lot of my time helping people think through how to process all of the different information that they are consuming on a daily basis and how to sift through that. So from that standpoint, I look at it like an overabundance of information. So as a media person that produces media, I think it's wonderful that media has become so democratized, that everybody has an opportunity to create something and put something out into the world, that everybody has an opportunity to have a podcast or have a camera or make a movie or make a short or find out that they're a comedian that can have an audience on Facebook, or all of these different avenues. I'm, as a creative at heart, as an artist at heart, seeing that happen, I think is just absolutely wonderful and beautiful. As a media literacy educator and someone that helps people decipher through the world of it, it worries me because of that same democratization. Because everybody has access, there are no boundaries. And that
fewer boundaries.
Boundaryless, I don't even know if there are any, right? Like you could be 12 years old, buy a camera, and have a YouTube channel all in 1 hour.
Yeah.
To me, that is problematic. When you're talking about the constant...
Problematic for who?
For the public, right? Because who is determining what information is real or good?
Doesn't matter.
Or valid? I think it does.
That's the part of free speech.
I think
that 12-year-old has the right to do whatever he wants and produce whatever he wants and put it out to the world however he wants to do it. And there is no overarching body that is supposed to say, nope, that's not real and this is real.
As a media literacy educator, I disagree. And I think
then you're
that
promoting censorship.
I don't know if you think about. I think about it, and it's so interesting because I talked about this on the very first podcast I was with you all. It was the same issue when the printing press became ubiquitous and anybody could print anything. It was the same issue, right? Anybody could print a tract, and I could make a tract and print it and put it out to everybody in the town that Bill was a hermaphrodite. And everybody go, oh my God, did you read the track today? The Bills and Memphis, like Brian has 3 kids with wolves, right? And everybody would believe these things. And so that proliferation and speed of access to producing content that everybody could get a hold of was boundaryless. And it created unstable governments. It created an unstable society. It created a world where nobody really knew what was real and what was fake. And, and so what ended up happening was the education system had to change the way that it taught. Then you started to get institutions being built that one of those was the invention of a newspaper. Mm-hmm. This happened in England. Can't remember the name of the first newspaper, but that newspaper was created by a board of people that said, we need some type of document where people know this is information that they can trust. And that is what created whatever the 3 letters of that press organization that we still have to this day. And it also created universal meaning when it came to English words. So everybody would agree that red, the color red, was the color red. Orange was the color orange. Why meant why. What meant what. It gave words meaning, because we lived in this place where you're saying, as human beings, we're going to take advantage of that space. If no one says you need to drive 35 miles an hour in the zone, we're going to completely take advantage of the fact that no one says I need to drive 35 miles an hour. If there's no stop sign or no red light, people will completely take advantage of the fact of that. And so I think there is a danger in not having boundaries in any space that you're dealing with humans, on any section of human society, whether you're talking about school, whether you're talking about play, right? Even on the playground, there are rules. Right?
Sure, we live in a society.
We
live in a society of laws.
Yes,
and it keeps order.
Yes.
However, you can't control human nature.
Well, I think, is it about control, or is it about
because
creating?
If that governing board of the newspaper is determining what's real and what's allowed to be said, that is manipulation in itself. It's happening today.
I think what you're talking about, though, is I think you're talking about censorship of opinion.
Yes.
Right. So censorship of opinion is
truth
different.
is the same, though.
What used to happen when you saw Tom Brokaw say something on the news,
yes,
it was journalistically checked by independent sources, and it was all of that kind of stuff. Yes. There was a clear delineation of this is news and this is opinion.
Sure.
Right. So Meet the Press was opinion and Tom Brokaw was news.
Correct.
Right. And so what happens now is that 12-year-old with a camera gets on and says, this girl I know in my class is this thing. Then there is no corroboration for that. They can say whatever they want. And that can be, I'm going, I have a teenager. I see this every day. That could be very damaging to kids because there is no self-governing of it. Yes. Right. They don't feel the need to, if it's going to make them popular, they don't feel the need to stop it.
It's the very reason why there were laws against yelling fire in a public place.
Right. Because it could cause
because
more
of the damage that could cause.
Totally different, though.
How?
It's totally different.
In what way is that different?
Because you have a captivated group of people in a building. You have to choose to watch something on social media.
Yeah.
Yes. You choose to put on Facebook. You choose to open up Instagram. You choose to put on TikTok.
Don't you also choose to drive a car?
Yes.
Don't you also choose to enter a restaurant?
Yeah.
Don't you also choose to enter a grocery store?
If I am in a theater, if I'm in a theater and someone comes into the theater and says fire.
Yes.
If there's a fire, then I want them to do that.
Yes.
If there's no fire, then they're causing chaos.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that person with a camera who's saying whatever they want to say is causing chaos.
Wait, what's the difference?
There's a lot of difference because I have to choose to go to that person's channel. I have to choose to watch them.
So your position is that unlike a restaurant or a grocery store or the state fair or as told by coming to a YouTube channel or social media page is different because what now?
Well, okay, but hold on. I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying because like
I don't think I'm understanding the difference.
Because when I'm on my YouTube, okay,
Sure.
what I'm being fed on YouTube is an interest graph. In other words, I'm being fed stuff that's like the stuff that I've watched.
Correct.
Right. So if I'm on TikTok or if I'm on Instagram, not quite so much, but like what used to happen even 3 or 4 years ago is you would see things from people you follow.
Yes.
Right. You would intentionally go follow that 12-year-old with a camera. What's happening now is that as you have watched something on YouTube, you get fed more of like what you've watched.
Sure. Yes.
Right. And so in a lot of ways, what happens is I think you're very correct in the fact that that the democratization of ideas, of opinions, and those kind of things, I think can be a good thing. I think what's got to happen though is that because you are so aware of your, surroundings and the things that you're being fed, it isn't affecting you in such a way. I think what's got to happen is people have to be aware.
Sure,
right?
That's where the literacy comes in.
Sure,
educating them how to differentiate.
Yeah,
the bull and the not bull.
Right.
Is important.
Yeah, it's so
However,
important.
Saying you can't say that because it's bull.
Yeah, and I don't think
correct.
that's what we're talking about.
No, that's not. I'm not saying that you can't say that because it's bull. What I'm saying is there should be categories. There should be boundaries. So, for instance,
yeah, but you're then determining who has to be in charge of determining what is good and what is bad.
So that's exactly what. So we're as doing. An example,
there shouldn't be anyone there doing that.
So let's take that philosophy that there should not be anyone creating boundaries on anything dealing in human society. Where else is that model effective? Is it effective in your home?
Well, but
is it effective? Is it effective on highway roads and streets? Is it effective in schools? Like, where else is the object of no boundaries an effective way of humans interacting?
We are breaking down our liberties when you take an authoritarian body and suppressing what people are allowed to say.
Why is it a suppression though? That's why I'm confused.
Because you're saying you can't do this.
So am I suppressed because they're telling me that this speed limit on this road is 35 miles an hour?
Yeah.
That's suppression?
Sure.
Well, so wait a minute.
Interesting.
So speed limits are also
suppression.
They were designed 30, 50 years ago.
Yes.
More than that, right? When cars were very different.
Yes. Cars
today can stop a whole lot faster than they could in the 60s, in the 50s, in
also
the 40s.
True. Mm-hmm.
But the speed limits have not adjusted for those things.
I'm not
So
I'm not arguing about the semantics of the speed limit. I'm arguing
as a body, as a government, as a society, we choose to allow certain suppressions. We don't need to allow those suppressions.
I'm curious as to why you're using the word suppression. Because
it's an
so your children, your rules for your children in your house are suppressive?
Yeah, you provide discipline for your children.
And that discipline is suppression?
In some cases. In some cases, I allow them to be more free.
So it would be fair if your kids told me that they're suppressed by their father and mother every day.
If their suppression is what I am deeming proper behavior, because I have the right to raise my kids the way I believe they should be raised. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if I believe that their behavior is exceeding where I want it to be, yes, I'm going to suppress that behavior. I'm going to suppress the fact that they don't need to be pantsing each other in the kitchen.
By the way, this is more than Brian has talked on any podcast we've had.
I love it.
This is really we have
really interesting.
We have hit an interesting topic for
We
Brian.
really have.
Which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we're doing is, though, in this conversation is we're getting tripped up on semantics. I don't think that an authoritarian government should be suppressive of the people. I don't think
I don't
that.
think anybody does.
However, I do miss the days of journalistic integrity. I do miss the days of if I hear it from Peter Jennings, I assume it's true, right?
Or read it in the newspaper.
So if we think about aliens in the ocean, right? Aliens in the ocean was a thing that went on completely without commentary from them, right? It's a Congress subcommittee hearing. Super weird that there are no photographs of any of this and no video of any of this, but they're talking about it. I would love to have some type of non-TikTok personality giving me some kind of context as to what in the heck this even is going on. What is this? Why are we having this congressional hearing? Who are the people doing the hearing? Who are these guys that are lined up there and they're saying, are aliens real? And they go, yes, absolutely. And they go, you're a commander in Space Force. I have no idea who these people are or what the context is.
Yes.
I miss the days where Peter Jennings would come on and say, a congressional hearing was held today by this committee interviewing these people about this thing.
Yes.
And you understand that he has 3 or 4 sources who have given him this independently, and all of those things are checked. I think in a media world where it's all opinion,
yes,
then
by anybody
at
any time,
and you're in a position to say, I have researched this, meaning I Googled it and I read the first 3 articles that came up. So therefore I'm an expert, right? I think that is a challenging place to be. Not good or bad necessarily. It's just a challenging place to be. And you've got to be much more self-aware of being fed stuff, right? You've got to be self-aware of being fed things, right? That aren't.
That's an evolution of our society.
But
that's an evolution of how we absorb media.
So
a person has to be able to. We learned how to do things as society evolves and changes.
Right.
So this is just one thing we have to learn. And having a literary course on it and how to educate them on how to absorb information, understand what is opinion, what is news that has been verified,
right,
is what we need to do. I'm not saying we don't need to do that.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is it's important to understand that nobody's. I don't think anybody's for an authoritarian government suppressing one opinion or the other.
But what we end up getting is we give up things for convenience.
Sure.
So Siri, Alexa are all things we are giving these giant technology companies our information on a daily basis.
Yeah. Willingly. For entertainment.
For convenience. For convenience.
There you go.
That's the weirdest thing.
Exactly.
The iPad is sitting over on the thing.
That was so good.
Oh my God.
That was so good.
I don't know if we caught that on the audio, but that was perfect.
This is it. We are voluntarily giving up our, in a sense, data, our personalities, our everything.
Yes.
Right.
Amazon's goal is to be able to send you toilet paper before you know you need it.
Yes. Right, because it knows you're out.
It knows you're out.
And you don't have to think about whether you're out.
Because everything in your house is connected.
Right.
Yes.
And we are giving that to them.
Now,
yes, we are.
My question is, and I can't tell the answer.
But hold on. So because of that, our willingness to just give to authority, essentially, because they are in control of a lot of stuff that we do.
Yes. This is true.
We are giving it out of pure convenience and laziness.
And some of it's ignorance.
Same thing that we're doing for the media companies, for all of this stuff we've been talking about. We are naturally just being lazy and saying, I see it. It's probably true. I move on because I got so much other stuff.
I think it's a little bit more complicated than laziness, right? I think one of the things that we have to remember, particularly when it comes to technology, is everything is by design. I think laziness is ignoring the science that goes behind swiping left or swiping right,
or up.
Like these are all designs that tech companies and any type of even as Tobai, you all have a process that has been designed when you're dealing with the client. It's not by happenstance that you get a particular outcome, because your outcome needs to be measured and it needs to be duplicatable. And I think that's also important to understand. Since particularly 2007, when the iPhone came about, humanity, which includes societies, have been put into this world that has been driven by tech, which is new when it comes to humanity.
Yeah.
Prior to 2007, humanity drove tech, whether that was a hammer, whether that was a car, whether that was a horse and buggy, whether that was it was human nature forward progression that made someone say, hey, let's come up with this thing that helps humans do this, right? That they're already doing, as opposed to now where technology is leading humanity, which is completely new for us. And so I think that although it is an evolution that we're in this space of these digital democratized spaces, there are some general things that humans need to function. And one of the things that humans need to function are agreed upon rules. That's what makes a society.
We don't need
a society.
We don't need those to function. We need those to
I
survive and live amongst each other.
Well, I think
that's the same thing.
Yeah,
because in order to have a society, in order to have a community, you need agreed upon agreements.
Sure.
Whatever you can call them rules, you can call them boundaries, right? You can call them whatever you want. But there has to be a set of agreements if we're going to have a community or a society. We have to agree the role of the father and the child, the mother and the child, the husband and the wife, whether or not are we going to school or not, how are we traveling, how are we sharing food, who's collecting the food, who's cooking the food. Like all of these agreements have to be there. And this is the first time in humanity, in human history, where our decisions as humans is not being driven by humans. It's being driven by tech. And that is the part where I think if you're looking at it from the standpoint of how are we adapting and adjusting to the newness of this new world we've never been in before, I think we have to go back to the things that made humans function properly, which are agreements. And I think without agreements, you continue to move towards a world or a space that some people are welcoming, where there are no agreements and we just let tech run humans, and then we figure out how to adapt the tech along the way in this new world. Some people are okay with that. I think that's problematic to humanity. However, that is my position when it comes to having agreements. Or if you want to call them boundaries, if you want to call them rules, if you want to call them laws, whatever. But I think society should have agreements when it comes to the democratized space of media.
Well, and I think what you're talking about is what we call social contract theory, which is basically like the three of us can't sit here and talk without the agreement that I'm not going to suddenly attack you.
Yes.
Or you're not going to rob me.
Yes.
Right. These are, whether you get
unspoken,
those, whether you get those from the 10 Commandments or the Torah, or wherever you get your sort of moral high ground. If we understand that from a society level, you understanding that I'm not going to covet your wife or that I'm not going to kill you, this is a social contract that we all have, right? It's unspoken. Right, it's not the law or authoritarian, whatever. It's a social contract. We have to understand that there are things that are accepted that we're going to do. Speed limit, is it on this street out in front of our office? You shouldn't go 70 miles an hour. It's not safe. All right, regardless of whether it says 35. Almost nobody goes 35 on that road, but you shouldn't go 90, right? Because it's not safe. It's not enough room to stop. There's not enough room to turn. But
even with the technology of stopping
certainly,
brakes.
But we're talking about moral compasses. We're talking about common sense.
Yep.
Those things are, not inherent to everyone.
Exactly.
But it doesn't.
Which is why you need agreements, because they are not
the moral
inherent
compass is
to
the
everyone.
agreement. What we're
That's
allowing.
not. That's not an agreement. How is that? If you know that without something regulating that street out there, that anybody at any given time,
because that little sign that says 35 isn't going to prevent someone from going 90.
You're absolutely correct. However,
so what we're talking about is the social contract that I am trusting that person is going to drive reasonably down that road.
Okay, so let's take the speed limit out of it. Say there's no speed limit sign now, and anybody can use their own moral compass to decide how fast they drive on that street. Which form of society agreement would you rather have on that street out in front of the office? But one where anybody uses their own moral compass to decide what speed they're going, or one where we have an agreement that this is what is safe for this space, which comes with consequences if you do not follow it? Which one would you rather be in?
I think either way, you're going to have about the same percentage of people. There are, and I'll see it. I'll be out on the sidewalk, and there's some moron going 90 miles an hour down that street. It happens.
Yes.
It's 3%, right? So whatever it is, you're going to have that curve. And I don't remember if it's Malcolm Gladwell that talked about it, but it's the idea that all of these agreements are really kind of set up around the social contract and the way that the social contract is kind of working already. Correct. Right? And the idea that, there are now what Malcolm Gladwell says is that no one who commits an egregious thing against the social contract, nobody thinks that they've done something wrong. There's always a justification, right? Mm-hmm. Now, going 90 miles an hour down the street, I'm not sure, but any type of kind of violation of the social contract is always kind of self-justified. And there are examples of, like, the bank robber will say, I robbed the bank because the bank charged me this thing, or I had this problem with something that happened, or I, wasn't approved for the loan, or what, or society suppressed me to the point that I couldn't make it any other way other than robbing people or whatever it is. Yeah. But you justify those things as you go along. That is such a minute, like, the vast majority of that curve is going to follow the social contract because it's how we work best, right? Right. I wear clothes. Functionality. I wear clothes to work because people would have a real hard time if I didn't wear clothes to work. Yes. I don't wear, leather chaps because people would have a hard time with me wearing leather chaps. It's like the social contract, and I could try it. I don't know, but the social contract is
You're on a ranch,
whatever. I mean, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. If I showed up to work at a cattle ranch dressed like I'm dressed today, they would think I was crazy. Mm-hmm. Right. But the social contract is what keeps us in that. I think the challenge is, and again, I see this because I have a teenager in the house. The challenge is that if you're on the other end of that ridicule, right? If you're someone who is saying someone has taken to their TikTok to complain about you and the fact that you're a nerd, or that you smell bad, or that you dress weird, or that you like the weird things, then all of a sudden it becomes, and that's, it becomes a 0 or a 100 thing, right? You're either not involved in it or you're the target of it, right? And when you're the target of it, all of a sudden you feel like there should be something you can do to stop this thing from happening, because that person can go on TikTok and say whatever they want. They can say that about you and what a jerk you are, or what, how they interpreted something that you said, or, whatever it happens to be. And yes, that sort of all out gladiator fight between my ideas and your ideas could be a thing where the biggest one wins, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But I think there should be some social contracts, some norms to say polite society doesn't do that kind of thing, right?
And where does that stem from?
Well, it stems from the idea that that people get along better. I'm more prosperous. I can feel more comfortable if I know you're not going to do that.
Where does that stem from? How does that person know the proper social norm?
So I think that what happens in a lot of those cases is they've been subject to that, right? So someone has done that to me. So for me to feel balanced, I have to do that to someone else, right? Okay. That's typically how those things transfer.
It's learned behavior.
Right. Learned behavior, yeah.
So it gets back to the home.
Right. Sure.
It gets back to our homes are the root of that moral compass that need to be taught to the next generations.
That's one side of the equation, right? Because a society is made up of homes. So society's understood agreements say your home is your business. However, once you put that home in a community, now that home is also everybody's business, right? So there's two sides to this.
The community itself is essentially so if you think
I think you're misunderstanding my words. So when I say home, when it comes to the community, I don't mean what's happening inside the home. I mean that home being a part of all these other homes, which makes the homes plural, right? So that means that you have two factors here that are working together. One of them is the individual, and one of them is the society that the individual operates in, right? So what I'm getting at is you need both to have a society that functions. Yes, you need to
step
have,
out in the public. You're saying it becomes a more of a
societal issue, right?
But
so I can have my own personal feelings about whether or not I want to slap somebody or fight somebody or chew somebody or steal somebody's shoes in my home, but acting upon those things when I'm out in society, I have to deal with the consequences of that society. And so I think one of the things that's important to understand about the way the society works, particularly for this conversation, is to understand that both of those things work in tandem. I don't believe you'll find I don't believe there's a functioning society in human history that had them separate. I think every functioning society in human history had them together, where there was a understanding of the rules that you're guided by when it comes to your own moral compass and the things that you operate by, and then the rules that we operate by when it comes to society that we're functioning in.
But when they're similar, when those home values are similar to the society values, that's when everything is in sync. When the society values aren't following the home values, or we're not promoting the right home values, it changes the society values.
Well, I mean, I think that kind of goes without saying, Brian. Like, don't you think? Like, I think that.
But what I'm saying is, if we're allowing a governing body to change the society values, or deteriorate the home values so the society values change, which is what's happening.
I think I understand what's going on here, because you're using some very interesting words, and I think it goes back to what Bill said earlier, because you used the word governing body, and then you also used the word when you talked about the home. I can't remember the word now, but something Bill said earlier about the suppressing of opinions. I think you were right. I think what you're getting caught up on is a person's ability to have an opinion, and then some entity controlling whether or not that person can have an opinion.
I think or express that opinion.
I think that's what we were talking about from the whole time.
That's not
that's
what
where
Bill
I think
said earlier. And I think that's where you're getting tripped up, is because I think you're seeing it as something coming in and saying, no, I have to hold you in this cage. And that's not at all what I'm saying.
And I will tell you that all of that, I think, hinges around the idea that that what you're saying works in a homogenous society. In other words, if we're Sweden or Denmark,
Japanese
or the Japanese, what we've got in the United States is that living in South Carolina, as you can tell me 100%, living in South Carolina is very different than living in Wisconsin or living in Oregon or living in Southern California.
Yes.
Where, what has to be, we look at it as being homogenous, but it's what it is. And by the way, this is the deepest conversation we've had on this thing. I mean, usually it's very surface. Like, what are you doing?
It.
What are you doing with your business right now? And all that
I
stuff.
love it.
We're not talking about like the
We got
unraveling
Brian
of society.
talking more than any podcast.
I know.
We got the deepest
this is
podcast of all
it's a
time.
good catalyst. You've been a good catalyst. It's
There
so.
it is.
My question for you is: do you look at this as a good thing? Because I can't tell. It seems like you're saying that the democratization of opinions is something that's happening. It's an evolution of communication, but at the same time, you're looking at it as almost like a degrading of society.
There's a lot of things going on here.
Yeah.
So we've talked around in circles this whole time, where I'm not even sure we're all clear on what we're actually discussing at this point.
Well, but I think that's an interesting allegory for how it really works, right?
Sure.
Where you're saying words and you're saying words and I'm saying words
And
I'm
where
not
is
sure.
the agreement?
Kind of started with Sherrard saying, or Shekeese saying,
Same person.
saying that, making the point that the words mean certain things.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And we know that society is changing the meaning of words very rapidly.
Yes. When we're talking about agreements and we're talking about responsibilities, I think the individual has a responsibility to society and society has a responsibility to the individual. Mm-hmm. And I think if we're going to live in a place where everyone has access, very similar to when being able to print anything became ubiquitous, there needs to be some sort of agreement of what identifies what as what, so that humans can learn to function again. Because what's happening with the democratization of media now is people are losing the ability to function, which naturally happens when you don't know what's up or down or left or right, right? If we all don't agree what's up and we all don't agree on what's down, then we're left with people going, well, what's up, what's left, what's right? And that's what happens when you're in a place that does not have any agreements. And what I think would be beneficial actually to the media landscape, I mean, you use the word suppression. I think what would be beneficial is agreements. And so if we're going to have information that is news, we need to determine, and that does need to be by somebody, some governing body, what is news, what is opinion, what is, no different than there's a difference between a newspaper and the National Enquirer. Like, I think those delineations are important to humans being able to function, because we are in a space as human society where we're the tail and technology is the dog. I think it's imperative that we create some place for human beings to feel settled, because most of what people are feeling, whether you're talking politically, whether you're talking about in terms of technology, is people don't feel grounded because everything is happening so fast and nothing is able to keep up. All of the tools that we used as human beings prior to now are not functioning fast enough for us to be able to keep up with how rapid things are changing. I mean,
and now you got AI coming around.
And now you got AI. It's about to blow. It's about to go to a whole nother level.
You're going to be like, I'm not even sure if that's a real person talking.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's a real person. I'm not sure if that's a real song.
It's
going to
get
if that's
so
a real
good.
art, right?
Yeah.
And so it's gotten to the point where, and again, I think it's very important to note that this is on some level complacency and laziness. However, we have to acknowledge that complacency and laziness was by design.
But it's also the second half of Wall-E, where we're all floating around on our bones have disintegrated because we don't walk anymore.
All of these technological advancements we did not agree to. That's the part that I think needs to be acknowledged.
And they're just happening.
And they're just happening. Like when you go and get a phone now, no one shows you how to use the phone when you upgrade your device. You just go in there with your device. They set the phone up for you and then they hand you the new one, right? Like, you go to the bar now and they go, oh, we don't take cash anymore. You have to use your device. Oh, no. You have to go to the app now to do your insurance. Oh, no. You have to go online. You didn't ask. You weren't asked. You weren't given a suggestion. So you talk about suppression. Really, that's suppression because you're not even having the opportunity to say, well, wait a minute. Can I just use the paper way I used to use when I come to the doctor's office? And they're like, no, we don't even have the paper way anymore.
And I think the way
that's why people want to live off the grid, right?
Yeah, it is. Exactly. It's one of the reasons.
Because the only way to stop it is to turn it off.
Well, see, and that's where I think I go back to what you said earlier. I think turning it off is the equivalent of running away.
Sure.
So I'm
not saying that that's not.
Yeah.
In a way, it is. If I go live off the grid, I'm running away from society.
Running away from society.
I can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I don't think that's a.
But that is a choice that you can make if you're overwhelmed with it.
Definitely a choice that you can make. However, that also takes you out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what humans have to do that are in the game and playing the game is figure out how can we function inside this game in a way where everybody feels like they have some sense of control in the game, as opposed to feeling like they don't have any kind of sense of control at all.
I think
that goes
that
back to what you
back
said
to
earlier.
Just life in general, because it doesn't matter what part of society and what time frame in society you've lived. Mm-hmm. There's always people that say, I can't handle it. And and then there's people that don't want to play in the game, and then there's people that are running the game, and that's how we got where we are. People are running the game.
While there is a level on which you are right, I think you also have to acknowledge that we're in a place in humanity, in human society, we've never been in ever. So yes, you can say that there are other points in human history where there have been people that felt like I don't have any sense of control. That's true. However, where we are now and the scale in which we are now as humans across the globe when it comes to tech, we're at a point where we've never been.
Well, sure.
Humans have never been in a place where technology is the dog and humans are the tail. That's never been a place that we've ever been. And so I think is me personally, and again, this is my media educator hat on. As a filmmaker, as a media producer, I think it's great that everybody can produce. But as an educator, I think that it's fair to figure out a way that everybody can function, which is the purpose of education, right? The original function of education is to get you to understand how to be literate, how to read, how to write, how to do math, how to be able to go outside and operate, right, in a way where you can function. And I think that system, whether it's by a governing body or whether Brian is a part of that body, whoever the
which he might should be. I mean, that might be the next step for you. Get involved.
And I know that
Brian for city council.
I know that has its and the reason why I use those words specifically because, and I'm glad that Brian, I'm glad you use those words because those words are triggering. Mm-hmm. I think people hear the word governing body and they go, oh, oppression, right? I think people hear the word. However, everything we operate with has a governing body. The car that we sit in, the seatbelt we put on, the restaurants we go into, the food we eat at the grocery store.
I remember my parents' generation talking about never wearing a seatbelt. They were like, I am never wearing a seatbelt because the government told me I had to.
There's some governing body that determine what type of medicine is safe for the human eyes. There's some governing body that determine what type of rubber is safe.
Governing bodies of any kind can be corrupted.
That is also true.
What has to be
that is also true.
Against.
that I don't.
And if you
but
and if
but
you're suppressing speech,
why are you
you're
using the
going
word,
to-
Brian? Why are you using the words defended against? Like, do you defend yourself against the ruling body that puts the letters on restaurants when you going to eat?
No, but I can be aware of how they're being done.
Right. So why
Yeah.
not say be aware? Why say defending against? Like, you want to be aware that there's a body that's out there saying this restaurant gets an A because of cleanliness and health rules.
It's like
I don't
defensive
think
driving.
you want. I don't think you
It's
want
like
to be
defensive driving.
outside and saying I'm defending myself against this body that's saying that place gets an A or a B.
Being aware.
Do you see the difference though?
Yes, but being
that's
aware,
what I'm asking you.
Being
Do you see
aware
the
of
difference?
Things,
Yes.
Being aware of things is also being defensive of your thing. If I'm walking through a city and I'm aware of my surroundings,
Yes.
I am in a defensive mode. Because I am understanding that if I'm walking through the city or walking through the subway, I'm looking and scanning the room, making sure I'm aware of my surroundings. Because I'm defending myself. I'm not literally defending off attackers, but I am pre-defending myself.
All right, so
being aware of what is in there is
so let's
defending
agree that words have meaning.
Absolutely.
So you can't take defense and then put pre in front of it and have a different meaning. Because you literally just went, no, I'm pre-defending. Oh, hold on. There's got to be you got to use a different word. Then we can't just say.
There's various degrees of defending yourself.
But here's the
That's
interesting
true,
thing.
but you can't.
I don't
think
look at it
playing
that way.
loose with the words is part of the reason why we're in a place where it feels like we're all talking in circles. But it's also why we feel so. I think it's why so many people feel so necessary to go to their particular media corners, right? Whether or not, regardless of how you feel, like I think that's why people go to their camps on social media, is because we take words and we kind of do whatever we want to do with them. It's very hard for me to have a social contract if we can't agree that this is a table. You know what I mean? Like if you take table and it means one thing to you and different thing to me, we're in a weird space, you know. You know what I mean?
But I don't do that. I mean, so when you're talking about that, I can see what you're talking about. When I walk through a strange city, I'm aware of my surroundings. I'm aware of my surroundings, but I'm not.
defensive.
We do a lot of that.
I don't feel defensive.
Yeah, the word isn't
but,
defense.
yeah,
the word awareness
So-
and defense is not the
Yeah.
same.
Yes.
Defense is an action.
but I think
Awareness is a state of being.
I just think it's an interesting perspective.
It's two different things.
You're doing a lot of it subconsciously and you don't even know it.
It
While
could be.
while that may
So-
be true, defense is an action. Awareness is a state of being. Defense is an active thing.
You
that
have to
do.
have awareness. If you're aware of something, that is a state of
This conversation just got super meta.
Well, and I'll
But
tell
if you're aware of, if you're having awareness, that is an action.
Awareness is not
I will tell you.
Yes,
I'll
it
give
is.
you a story
If
about
I'm
this.
aware of what's going on, I'm actively
it's-
being
you're-
aware. Yes,
No,
it is.
I'll
If
tell you a
you
story
are-
about this.
It's because you
so
use
the very first time I went to New York City with my wife. This was before this is the year we got engaged. We were staying in Midtown Manhattan, and as a Southern boy, I was always very much warned of how dangerous Manhattan was. Like, so you step out the door, you're going to get robbed. So you got to be very aware of the fact that this is a dangerous place to be. And we got to New York City, walked out the front door of a hotel that was in Midtown Manhattan, and I was terrified. My wife had never been to Manhattan before. She was a doe-eyed, Southern country girl. She's like, "Gosh, look at these tall buildings." She was walking around like, and she and I walked around, and I said, "We need to go back to the hotel because I don't feel safe out here." Right. And since then, obviously, I've gotten a little bit more comfortable, and I was in my early 20s at that point. I'd never really traveled a whole lot by myself and all that. I don't, as I have gotten awareness of the world, and I've been in a bunch of different cities, and I've experienced a bunch of different, cultures and different things, I'm not as afraid. But because I grew up here, and because not even in Columbia, I grew up in the country. because I grew up in the country, I was terrified to be in Midtown Manhattan without some type of like safety bubble, or there's like I was kind of exposed to the elements. I think it's all perspective. It's all just a matter of like,
Yes.
If you think, because nothing's ever happened, I've never been mugged. If I had been mugged at some point, then I would be defensive against a thing that had happened to me, right? But because I've been through so many of those situations and nothing's happened, and this is the same thing with government, with any suppression, with any of that stuff, when nothing's really happened, you get to a point where you go, it's probably fine, right? And you can look at it as laziness, you can look at it as ignorance, you can look at it as whatever, but you get a comfort level when you go through things and you go, that worked out okay. I proposed to my wife on that trip. So I was carrying a little diamond. I was 22, so I didn't have a big diamond. I had a little diamond. It's a half carat. I was carrying it in my jacket pocket. And
Were you terrified that somebody was going to steal a little diamond from you?
Yes. And so when I proposed to her, we did a horse-drawn carriage in Central Park because I knew that I could get inside the carriage and close the doors. And that was where I did it, right? And it was it was New Year's, so it was 12 degrees outside, and I was like, "Take your gloves off." And she's like, "Why am I taking my gloves off? It's freezing in here." It's like, just do it, And so I had to put her gloves back on once I gave her the ring. We got out, and so it. But I think that. That defensiveness.
Put the glove on over that ring.
I know.
We're going to get it robbed.
We tell that story all the time. It's hilarious. Like, I'm thinking back on it, but that defensiveness was based on ignorance, was based on the fact that I'd never been there before, was based on the fact that my mom always refused to go to New York City because of how dangerous she said it was through the 80s and 90s, whatever. Not talking about now.
So incredibly important. Like, you really just gave us the platform to understand the difference between awareness and defense, because everything that you said is so critically important to how human beings understand the society we interact with. So much of how we interact with society, even on social media platforms, is perspective.
Yeah.
It's all about the perspective that we're bringing to it. That doesn't have anything to do with the thing. Right.
It's our experiences.
It didn't have anything to do with New York.
Right.
It had everything to do with all of your own experiences that you experienced prior to you coming to New York. Right.
In 1998, New York was no more dangerous than it is now or anything else. It was just my ignorance of what was
varying
going on.
degrees. However, the fact remains that how you felt had nothing to do with any influence from New York itself.
Right.
That influence was completely created by your own experiences and your own perspective, right? And so the reason why that's such a great platform for us to talk about the difference between defense and awareness is being in a place where you can understand that you don't know the things outside of your perspective.
Right.
That is a state of being. It's because if I am aware, then I am keeping myself open to perspectives that are not my own. I am not in an active state of defending. I'm saying awareness is saying I can't look at the place I'm in and judge it based on my own experiences.
Right.
I have to be aware that there are other experiences around me, right? Which is how your wife was looking at the trip to New York.
Yeah.
However, your perspective...
She couldn't understand why I didn't want to be out. She's like, I don't understand what you're wanting.
But your perspective turned you into someone that wasn't aware.
Right.
You became defensive.
Yeah.
You actively were going, we can't be outside. We have to go back in hotel. Don't put the ring on out in public. Put the glove on that ring. Do you see the difference there? Do you see the difference between?
I understand your point, but I don't agree with it. So we got to go there.
Yeah. Well,
I think that point, whether
there's multiple levels of
incredible.
Awareness. There's multiple levels of awareness and types of awareness. All right, your point is valid of what you were saying in terms of what your description of awareness is. But
see that,
there's
but see
different
that right
levels of
there is the
awareness.
issue. That
There's
right there
different
is the
levels
issue.
of awareness.
That right there. But if we say that there's different levels of everything, we're never going to agree on anything.
Okay.
You do understand that?
Sure, but there's
There's different degree of
levels of
sneakers.
awareness.
There's different degree of light. There's different degree of lumix. There's different degrees of
There are
tables.
different degrees of light.
Like we're never gonna agree.
let me
We're never
say
gonna agree.
that.
But can
that-
we just agree that that's light?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a
Okay.
different subject.
All right.
All right.
Let me just say that I was a philosophy major in college.
Clearly, because you're very good at this.
I love sitting around talking about philosophy. We've never gotten to this level on the podcast, which is really exciting. I'm digging
it.
back into my references. I'm going, who was it that said that, right? And so this is really cool. So, and I've never seen Brian this animated. It's
I
so
love it.
exciting. I was like, I'm watching him blossom.
And I
as
thoroughly
a-
appreciate both of your perspectives and opinions.
And we could talk about this
and
for another
time.
hour.
Yeah, but
This
we,
was
we
very,
can't, we
very
can't do that.
engaging. Thank you both. I
so
really
thank you
appreciate
for
it.
coming on.
And
This
thank
was
you for
this
having
was
me.
really fun. And I think it's interesting that every time we sit down, we end up talking about this stuff. You know,
Yes.
It's it's very deep. I did kind of intend to talk to you about. I only asked you one question, by the way. I did end up. I wanted to talk about like entertainment business stuff, and I wanted to talk about like music stuff and whatever. But whatever. We'll do that
Hopefully
next time.
there'll be
We'll do
a
a third
future.
time. Yeah,
We'll
you're
do a
the
third
only
time.
2-time guest, and I think this is probably why, because it's
Yes.
like there's a grain of like a conversation starting that went
Yes.
into that, which I think was really cool. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you both.
And
I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
we'll pick it up some other time.